The air inside the hangar was electric, a blend of pride, tension, and whispered curiosity. Rows of officers stood at attention, their dress uniforms gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. The occasion was supposed to be simple, a promotion ceremony for a handful of outstanding personnel. But everyone knew the real reason the place was packed wasn't the new ranks, it was her. Lieutenant Commander Elena Rios stood in the front row, calm and unmoving, her expression unreadable. The silver trim of her uniform caught the light, and a faint scar along her jawline told stories the Navy never printed in reports. She had earned this, every ribbon, every star, every breath. Yet, behind her, whispers buzzed like static. "That's her," someone murmured. "Yeah, the one who led the Black Sand rescue. Saved the colonel himself." No way, that mission was classified, so was she, until now. At the podium, Colonel Marcus Harlan adjusted his collar, his jaw set tight. He was tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who filled a room by presence alone. But beneath his composed exterior, something darker stirred. He'd never forgotten the sting of that mission, not because Elena had saved him, but because she'd taken command when he froze. She had defied his order in the field and saved 40 men. Officially, she was commended. Unofficially, he despised her for it. When her name was called, a hush swept through the hangar. "Lieutenant Commander Elena Rios," the commanding officer announced, his voice echoing. "For extraordinary leadership under fire, and for actions above and beyond the call of duty, you are hereby promoted to." Before the CO could finish, Harlan stepped forward. "Sir, if I may." The CO frowned, but nodded. "Make it quick, Colonel." Harlan turned to Elena. His smile was practiced, but his eyes burned. "Lieutenant Commander, before this ceremony continues, perhaps you'd like to explain to this assembly how you disobeyed direct orders during a classified mission." A ripple of murmurs swept the room. Elena didn't move. Her voice was steady, low, and cutting through the noise like a blade. "I followed the mission objective, sir, to bring every man home alive. Including you." Gasps, stifled laughs, and awkward coughs filled the air. The CO's brow furrowed, but he didn't interrupt. Harlan stepped closer, his voice hardening. "You overstepped, Rios. You think a few lucky calls make you above protocol?" She looked him squarely in the eye. "No, sir. Just above hesitation." The tension snapped. Harlan's hand twitched. A flash of movement. Before anyone could react, he swung, an open-handed strike aimed at her face. It never landed. Elena moved. Not fast, but precise, almost effortless. Her hand shot up, catching his wrist midair. A sharp twist, a grunt, and before anyone fully understood, the decorated colonel was on one knee, gasping in pain. The sound that followed was deafening silence. Even the flags hanging from the rafters seemed to still. "Let go of me," he spat, trying to wrench free. She released him instantly and stepped back, posture crisp, expression neutral, as if nothing had happened. "Permission to return to attention, sir." The commanding officer finally rose from behind the podium, his expression unreadable. He walked slowly toward her, eyes sweeping the crowd that dared not breathe. "Lieutenant Commander," he said calmly, "do you have anything further to say?" She shook her head. "No, sir." He turned toward Harlan, who was still flexing his wrist, his pride more wounded than his body. "Colonel Harlan," the CO said, his voice ice cold, "you're relieved of duty. Effective immediately." Harlan froze. "What? You can't." "I can," the CO interrupted, stepping closer, "because the woman you just tried to strike outtranks everyone here." A stunned murmur rose, like a storm breaking. "Rear Admiral Elena Rios," the CO continued, removing the insignia from his own hands and pinning them on her collar himself, "has been promoted by direct order of the Joint Chiefs. Her record, her leadership, and her actions in the field have earned her not just this title, but our respect." Every head in the hangar turned. Every spine straightened. The same soldiers who had whispered moments before now stood taller. Rios remained still, but something flickered in her eyes, not pride, but something quieter. Resolve. Harlan's face drained of color. This is a mistake." The CO raised a hand, silencing him. "The only mistake, Colonel, was underestimating her." The hangar erupted in applause, cautious at first, then swelling into a thunderous roar. Sailors pounded their boots. Officers saluted. Elena turned slowly, acknowledging them with a crisp salute, but her eyes scanned past them, past the cameras and cheers, to the men and women she'd once led through the sand and smoke. In the back row, she saw Chief Warrant Officer Diaz, the first to follow her orders that day. He nodded once. That was enough. Afterward, as the crowd dispersed, the CO approached her quietly. You could have broken his arm, he said. She glanced at her gloved hand. I thought about it, sir. He gave a small smile. I'd have let you. She didn't smile back, but her eyes softened. With respect, sir, I don't break what's already broken. The CO gave a slow nod and stepped away, leaving her alone in the echo of fading footsteps and applause. For a moment, she stood still, staring at the Navy flag rippling in the draft. The stripes reflected on the polished floor, fractured by the light, like memories of battles no one talked about. She touched the new insignia on her collar. It felt heavy. It always would. Outside the hangar, the evening sun cut across the tarmac in gold and amber. Pilots moved about their aircraft. Crews shouted orders. Life went on. The Navy moved forward. But as she stepped into the light, the whispers started again, softer this time, almost reverent. That's her, someone said. The one who outranks everyone. Elena paused for a heartbeat, then walked on without turning back. She had earned every salute. But more than that, she had earned silence. The hangar had emptied hours ago, but the echoes of applause still seemed to cling to the steel walls. Rear Admiral Elena Rios stood alone in her new office, a space that felt less like a promotion and more like a battlefield dressed in glass and oak. The nameplate on the desk gleamed, Rear Admiral E. Rios. She didn't sit. She never liked desks. They built barriers, and she had spent her entire career breaking them. Outside her window, the ocean shimmered under the dawn light. A new day, a new command. Her first order as Admiral had come through encrypted channels just before sunrise, a mission briefing for Operation Deep Veil, a classified recovery mission off the Horn of Africa. A hostile zone, minimal intel, and one name that made her jaw tighten as soon as she saw it on the roster, Colonel Marcus Harlan. She didn't request him. Someone else had assigned him to her task force, probably thinking it poetic or political, to make the two learn to work together. She exhaled slowly, rubbing her thumb across the scar near her jaw. So be it. The door opened without a knock. Captain Diaz, her trusted second, the same man who had followed her through black sand, stepped in. You saw the list, he said quietly. I did. Want me to pull him? No, she said, turning from the window. I want him to learn how command really works. Diaz's brow lifted slightly. You're serious about taking him? I don't leave broken links, she said, voice even. I reforge them. Hours later, the operations briefing room buzzed with energy. Digital maps flickered across screens, tactical readouts, terrain scans, and satellite overlays. Officers filled every seat. The air carried that mix of anticipation and unease that came before any classified mission. When Elena entered, the room went silent. Every officer stood. Harlan was at the far end, his wrist still wrapped from the incident at the ceremony. His eyes locked on her, unreadable but tight with pride. At ease, she said simply. The men and women sat, but the air stayed taut. Elena didn't speak from the podium. Instead, she walked slowly between the rows, hands clasped behind her back. Operation Deep Veil is not a test of courage, she began, her voice low but carrying. It's a test of clarity. You'll be working against time, visibility, and likely an enemy that's already watching. She tapped a screen. A red zone expanded over a coastal region marked only as Sector 12 Delta. This is your target area. 2 missing SEAL teams. No contact for 48 hours. We retrieve them or we bring back what's left. Harlan's jaw tightened. With respect, Admiral, this is Marine jurisdiction. Your Navy, Fleet Command. Shouldn't this be? She turned to face him before he could finish. Colonel, in this theater, jurisdiction is dictated by results, not logos. A few restrained smirks flickered across the room. Harlan shifted in his seat but said nothing more. Elena continued, her tone steady. We'll deploy at 0400. Command Vessel Aegis will act as coordination hub. Ground teams deploy via rotor insertion at 0500. Air support will remain on standby under my direct control. Then her gaze shifted across the room, to Diaz. Captain Diaz, you'll lead Alpha Team. Colonel Harlan, Bravo Team will fall under your supervision, with one modification. She paused. Bravo Team will operate under my direct oversight. The words landed heavy, a subtle reminder, a boundary set without aggression, but immovable all the same. Harlan looked ready to speak, but the CO's aide stepped in, announcing, Rear Admiral Rios, the Joint Command link is ready for confirmation. Elena nodded once and ended the briefing. Dismissed. By dusk, The Aegis cut through dark waters, engines low and steady. On deck, the night air smelled of oil, salt, and steel. Harlan stood near the rail, staring at the Black Sea, helmet under his arm. When he heard boots behind him, he didn't need to turn to know who it was. "Permission to speak freely, Admiral," he said tightly. "Granted," Elena replied. He turned to face her, his voice sharp. "You humiliated me in front of the entire base." She met his gaze calmly. "You struck an officer, Colonel." "I reacted," he said, jaw tight. "You undermined me in front of everyone." I saved you," she interrupted, voice cold but quiet. "Twice now, apparently." His mouth opened, but the words didn't come. She took a slow step closer, her tone softening slightly. "You think rank makes you untouchable. It doesn't. You think medals make you respected. They don't. Respect comes from restraint, from knowing when not to strike." He held her gaze for a long moment. Then he looked away, down at the dark water below. "I didn't ask to be on this mission," he muttered. "Neither did I," she said. "But we both got it. So we'll make it count." At 0500, the choppers roared over the desert coastline. The rising sun painted everything in gold and fire. Rios sat in the lead bird, headset on, eyes on the horizon. Diaz's voice crackled over the comms. "Alpha moving in. No contact yet. Copy," she replied. Then Harlan's voice came through, more composed than before. "Bravo team, eyes on the signal flare. Moving to intercept." Minutes passed. Tension climbed. Then static. Heavy and broken. "Bravo to command. We've got movement, not friendly." Gunfire erupted through the feed. The line went dead. Elena didn't hesitate. "Divert all air units to Bravo's coordinates." Within moments, the choppers banked hard, racing toward the last known signal. Sand and wind whipped through the air as they descended. Below, flashes of light marked heavy resistance. As the chopper's skids hit the ground, Rios jumped out before anyone could stop her, sidearm drawn, motion precise. Diaz landed behind her. They fought through the smoke, brief, sharp exchanges, until she saw him, Harlan, crouched behind a damaged Humvee, bleeding but alive, still firing. She sprinted to him, returning cover fire. "Colonel." He looked up, shock flickering across his dirt-streaked face. "You came yourself." "I don't send people to do what I can finish," she said, helping him up. They moved together, covering retreat positions until the last SEAL was loaded onto evac. When the dust settled and the choppers lifted into the sky, Harlan sat across from her, silent. The desert stretched endlessly below. Finally, he spoke, voice low. "You didn't have to come for me." She looked out the window, the horizon burning orange. "You're under my command," she said softly. "That means I always do." He stared at her for a long time, then nodded once, not as a superior, but as a soldier acknowledging something he hadn't understood until now. As the chopper carried them home, the radio cracked to life. Command wanted a report. Elena leaned forward, her tone even. "Mission complete," she said. "All personnel accounted for." Then, after a pause, "and Colonel Harlan requests reassignment, under Admiral Rios's fleet." She glanced at him. For the first time, he didn't look defiant. He looked respectful. The Admiral nodded once. Request approved. Outside, the sun rose higher, a bright new dawn cutting through the haze of war and pride alike.